going on, YouTubers? Alexander Weiss here with guest Casey Schmidt for the YouTube channel. Gonna be asking him some really awesome questions about archaeology and numismatics specifically. So yeah, if you can share this with people, like and subscribe, and yeah, you get a really interesting, in-depth perspective on what ancient coins and numismatics really is. So thanks for being on the interview, Casey. I really appreciate that. And just talking with him, we've talked for probably like 2 hours already, so we're going to try and keep this to about 30 minutes, and we might do some more things later. But we're here in Hastings, Minnesota. Thanks for doing the interview. Casey, what is numismatics?
Just the study of coinage, whether or just your money, and it goes back to about, I think we talked about the 650, 600 BC was when the first coins were struck.
Okay,
so
that's cool. Yeah, so like 600 BC, so 2,600 years ago is when the first coins came into being, or like came into creation, or like making it. Amongst what culture?
Probably so it'd be Greek city-states of modern-day Turkey. Herodias, a lot of people say he's the father of history, but he did exaggerate quite a bit though. But he would say Lydia, which is a province in modern-day Turkey, was the first coin strikes, but it could be Ionia, it could be Mysia, and now we have knowledge that the Indus Valley might have even had coins 100 years before, Herodias said.
Indus Valley meaning like modern day India?
Yep. So the Indus Valley is kind of where more Pakistan, Afghanistan is. Right?
Yeah. So like the Babylonian empires, the Akkadians, if I'm getting my history right, and like the, who was that? I mean, if you get back further, we're talking the history of...
I would say Persia probably reached there. I don't know if Babylonia reached that
like
far.
Assyria, Babylon, and then like even prior, you know, like I mean, the cradles of civilization biblically would be like the Tower of Babel or something like that. Did they have minted coins? And like we're gonna get to different things in the interview later, but like, can you tell me how a coin was made? That was really interesting when you were sharing with me off camera. Like, how is a coin like you've got here made or minted?
So you'd have an anvil and then your hammer, and on the hammer would be the die for the obverse or the front of the coin, and on the anvil would be the reverse of the coin, and then they would strike it. But coins also were cast, meaning that you'd almost like pour the liquid into a cast to make it. And I have a few of those, and they tried it in the ancient times, but I think they focused more on striking.
Yeah, and under the Roman Empire, was it pretty much strictly by striking that their coins were made?
They didn't start machining coins. Probably Augsburg, Germany was the first, and that would have been right around, I would say, mid 1500s. So right around about 100 years after the printing press.
Well, the other thing too, I guess it's kind of funny, is like if we're not going to be making pennies anymore in America, I got a 2024 penny. So I don't know how they make them today. Is it kind of the same process? Like, you know, like
it's a milling
apparently
process.
It's 2 pennies to make 1 penny in the American economy, so that's why Trump's trying to do away with it. But like, how do they do it currently? Is it like through a machine? It's like a stamp or like a cutout of copper?
The whole thing, the whole milling process is all automated. So you just basically turn it on. No one strikes anything anymore.
Okay. But so that how it was in the past is a lot like blacksmith work, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, in a sense, yep.
Okay. That's cool. So how about the second question? What is archaeology to you?
Just not just studying the past, but bringing it back to life.
Okay. Along with that, like, did you, so who was, when you studied it, because you studied numismatics in Germany, is that right? I don't know, what city was it in?
So it was, I stayed more in Munich, but then the one certificate course was in Tübingen, which is in the Baden-Württemberg state of Germany.
That's awesome. So who was your, like, favorite prof? I've got a question for you. Like, who's your favorite prof when you were studying in Germany?
I didn't really have, but I would say, because I was looking at that question, I had a Greek/Russian professor at Hamlin that really got me.
Here in Minnesota?
Yeah, at Hamlin University, that I got along with really good. He was awesome. I wanted to. I'd already collected ancient coins by then in my 20s, but he made me just. I mean, where you get that. Like
spark of life, like passion about
the passion
what you do.
For it. Yep. Like I would say, I mean, you got movies from when we were kids, like The Goonies or Indiana Jones.
Right.
But I think this professor really sparked. And then I had there was a lady from Kenya that really said I should focus on history or collecting, and then even getting into it, like selling and stuff like that.
Do you think it's kind of funny how, like, we're in a game shop right now here in Hastings, and I've heard from some of my, I don't want to call them nerds because they're not nerds, they're my friends from Subway, that some cards are so rare that, like, people will spend, like, millions of dollars on them, like the One Ring, like, what's the guy with tattoos? He bought the One Ring for like $6 million or whatever, like from Lord of the Rings, like it's like a card game. What's the
Pokemon's the other?
Yeah,
and
it's like these people are spending millions of dollars on cards, like just paper cardboard stuff, and like real money is like not even as much as that. Like it's kind of like
if the market's there, I get. I'm kind of like that Rick Harrison out on Pawn Stars. I can't get into that though, because it seems. I'd prefer like a coin that's a couple thousand years old.
Right. Like in my opinion, what they're spending like $6 million on that's just like fake. Yeah. I'd rather have like the real thing, like some of these things that you have in your collection are very, very valuable.
But it's obviously popular and it's got a market, so
No, and I think it's cool, like guys like Jake Paul buying like Pokemon cards or whatever off of like this dude that has like 90% of the Charizards or something. So it's like, you know, if you have most of the market, you can make most of the money if you sell it for the right price. So apparently the YouTuber Jake Paul made he spent a lot of money on just one card that this guy had, and you have such a vast collection. No, not Jake Paul. His brother.
Logan.
Logan Paul bought the Charizard card from this one dude that has like 90% of like the Charizard cards. But like looking at your collection, right? Like I'm trying to make a connection with people that are into collecting of other things that are making a lot of money. Like the rarity of a coin. Can you tell me like what in your opinion like makes a coin rare or valuable? Like how do you study, like how do you figure that for coins?
So like for instance, things that I look for are how many were minted, and then you're always going to be looking at the metal, how long the emperor reigned. Like I think there's an emperor Quintillus, and I think he only struck coins for 17 days because I believe he committed suicide on the Senate floor by slashing his wrists a long way because he was trying to show that I'm the emperor, I'm a god, I'm immortal, but he bled out and died. So for a while his coins were kind of rare, but then they found a big hoard of them, so I think the value went down quite a bit. So yeah, besides metal, how long the emperor reigned, or the city-state was in existence, if it has interesting things on it like counter marks, banker's marks.
So the rarity of how many there are, also the history behind them is what determines its value. What you're saying.
Yeah. Like the metal, but so intrinsic just means the metal, but then numismatic means the historical value.
Okay, so numismatic means like the value of history. That's cool. So in your opinion, like what's your favorite like era of history to study, or like general, you know, what are your areas of interest in your field of study?
I love
numismatic.
If it's from a numismatic point of view, then I would say the German tailors. That's where we get the word dollar. Or they're those are like, it's like a piece of artwork. But same. It went into Poland. It went into, you have the wire kopecks of Russia. Like those are really awesome. But any historical figure, I kind of get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's not, history is like one of those things where it's like people are drawn to what they're drawn to. For me, like I bought 5 when I first found Casey's case. I say that it's kind of funny, you know, like Casey's case at Hastings is pretty sweet, dude. And like I saw 4 coins that I bought from him. One being the Alexander the Great coin, the second one being the widow's mite because I have faith in Jesus, and like, you know, the story about the widow's 2 mites, she gave more than all the rich and the surplus.
Yeah, the people are putting gold and silver in.
Right, and she's just putting in 2 mites from, what was the king who struck the mint of the mite? Was it before Herod, or was it Herod himself?
It either was, so the mites were probably Alexander Janus or Herod the Great, but it could have been Herod Archeologist, who reigned from like 4 BC to 6 AD. But then when Jesus was being put to death, it probably was a mite of Pontius or Pontius Pilate, or I think his name is Gracious. He was a governor under Roman rule, but it could have been Herod Antipas as well, the one that kind of laughed at Jesus and didn't want to have to deal with him. So that's
the king that was there, but he wasn't Herod the Great. He was like his son or nephew.
I think
because he was brought before trial before that man as well.
I think it was a son. Yeah, I can't, because then Herod Agrippa's the one that dealt with Paul, and then he's written about an Acts of the Apostles.
Right, and you have a book actually. I saw in one of your things from 1621 or something like that. In a commentary on the Book of Acts or something like that.
Yep. That's 1681.
Yeah, those books are kind of expensive too. You want to talk a little bit about those too, or not really?
Even this coin book right here is from Paris, and it's 1660s. And we already found 2 coins. One was a Roman Republican denarius, and then the other is the where I set that. It's probably right here, and I believe it's a Roman Republican semi.
Yeah, and he matched that to something in this very book, guys.
And that's so this Janus heads.
Pretty awesome. Like it's like living history. It's like seeing history, not just like virtually, but like physically in your hands, which is amazing to me. And then so the other 2 coins I bought off him are the first Christian emperor, Constantine the Great is how he was known. 2 coins, and then I also bought the pre-war Nazi coin. I'm German. I'm a German American. You guys know that I'm a Republican and a God-fearing American patriot. But I appreciate the value of history, and like, you know, there's different things that you guys obviously know from my channel that I've talked about regarding Arminius, and my German ancestry and my German culture. You know, the Weiss family came here in the 1880s, and we pioneered here in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And, you know, it's just it's okay to be able to talk about different factors of history and even have different disagreements regarding it. And so, yeah, those are the 4 coins I bought from him. And then I also got my own American wheat penny from 1944. Vintage, right? And then I also had the 2024 American penny. So, you know, we can talk about other things on the channel, some things that are controversial, and that's okay. So
I think, the pre-war would have been made out of brass. I think it was something different.
The pre-war Nazi coin.
Yep. And then during the war, they made them out of zinc. I think it was pure zinc, so that's why they always turn like a grayish bluish color, because you need that copper for the war effort.
Right.
So
either for guns and ammo,
yeah. Because they'd probably use more of I'm guessing some sort of steel for the barrels and cannon barrels and stuff.
So let me ask you a question. From your personal collection, what is your most treasured piece that you have collected or found?
The ones that I found were mostly Roman, late Roman Empire. So
right, because I don't think they know this. I do, because we got to talk off camera. But where is it that you go and actually like metal detect in places that you?
Croatia is kind of the hot spot. So right by Diocletian's castle. It's usually along the beach, Split, Croatia. But you always land in. We always land in. So Iceland, then we go to like Munich, and I stay in Munich for a while, and then landed in Zagreb, which is the capital of Croatia.
That's awesome. Like, even just you saying that, it sounds like something out of like an Indiana Jones movie where he's like flying to different sites to do archaeology. And you were texting me about like the actual metal detecting equipment or whatever.
I think the stuff that I rented was all ex-Soviet because it had the Cyrillic the Russian alphabet, Russian writing on it. But even though it was probably older, probably pre-90s, it was still better than the American one that I spent $200 on. Like, I think it went a lot deeper. Like, obviously centimeters or metric, not the English system.
How long were you in Croatia for? Or how many times have you been to Croatia?
Not even a week. I think 2 days.
And how much did you find?
Probably 15 coins. One though was 3 like on top of each other. But it was almost like, I'd say it was like 8, maybe more inches deeper. And it was like just shocking that I found something. But then after you hit one, all of a sudden the dinging started pretty frequently.
Sweet. So, what of your collection? What is your most treasured possession for numismatically or like just archaeologically? Like, what's your?
I have I would say a German tailor, so a large silver coin that's dated like 1608. It's almost like a piece of art. But then I would say other.
That big of silver?
Yeah, I didn't bring it in.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's in my car. But it's basically the Saxon king shaking hands with the Polish king, and the Saxon vows to remain Catholic. And that's because during the Holy Roman Empire at that time, you're getting more emperors that are wanting to become Lutheran or Calvinist or something like that.
Yeah. It's interesting. So along with that, like Germany and our German history, because you're German, right? I'm German as well, German American, and I texted you on your phone regarding like some of the Crusade era Germany, like, and you told me something I didn't know. What was it? What was the name of a German crusader? What was their?
Teutonic Knights.
The Teutonic Knights.
So they would wear the yellow and kind of the flag of Holy Roman Empire, the yellow and black. But I think they were one of the few too that wore unusual things on their helmet, like horns, to try and scare your enemy. But yeah, so they were probably, because the Knights Templar were more French, but I think a lot of Swedes, a lot of after the Viking Age ended, there was a lot of
Swedish Templars.
Yeah, Swedish and Norwegian, but mostly French. Whenever they say an order like that, 90% are monks, I believe, and 10% are the warriors. But they're also monks too.
So super awesome that you started talking about Viking culture, because obviously everybody on my channel probably knows how much I'm into like Viking, Norse, Swedish, and German culture. And I just found out I was telling you off camera about the cowrie shells that they valued as more precious than money. So they would use them to buy or barter when they were at sea or in potentially Africa, because the Ghanaian people also use cowrie shells. The Chinese also use cowrie shells, and they have wonderful, wood architecture stuff as well. But going back to like the Viking era of history, like if somebody were to do like archaeology or like things regarding that nature in like Norway and Sweden, like what would they have to do to get like legal permission to do that? Or is that not? It's not your expertise.
I know that Northern and Western Europe are much harder to get metal detecting
permission.
Permissions and stuff. I'm guessing you would have to. But if you're not with a major institution or organization, they're probably just going to turn you down. I've requested to get into the Vatican Library a couple times, and they're just like, no, dude, no. Yeah. So it's like, I get it. Yeah. But
off camera, we were talking a little bit about some of my particular favorite eras of history. One being like, Friday the 13th when, the King Philip, was it?
King Philip the Fourth?
He has a coin actually in the store here.
Philip the Fair.
Yes, where the French king owed these Knights Templar money, right?
He just wanted their money. He knew that the Templars were extremely wealthy, and he was starting to become more and more in debt. And then I think it was on Friday the 13th, 1307, rounded them all up. And I think he killed the last Grand Wizard in 1314.
So 7 years later, and you guys saw last spring I was up in Alexandria checking out the Viking rune stone that people can say is a hoax, or you can say is valid history. And when you look into it, there's some pretty intriguing stuff. Like there was actually Templar, I'm pretty sure, or somebody associated with Templar Knights actually on that. Like they were 8 Goths and some Norwegians, and then there's actually evidences that some of those people that were, because that was after 1362.
Yep, they were. If it is authentic, they were most definitely Crusaders, because it's got 3 languages on it. It's got newer Futark, which is the Norwegian, Swedish, the Viking.
The runes.
Yep. But they would have used old Futark, and then it has Latin on there, and then I believe the dates 1362
Yep.
is in Arabic, which they would only have known that if they were fighting against during the Crusades. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting thinking about an organization, right? And that's what we were talking about a little bit that I liked when we just had our kind of one-on-one talk. Organizations, religions, whether it is one era of history, things can ebb and flow for good and bad in the whole of an organization or a church. But to be an astute learner of history, you need to have an understanding of what is, what was, and what potentially comes of it. And so, I think that it's really valuable when you're talking about controversial history topics to understand how people see history and why people see history the way that they do. For me, loving Viking culture and loving my Norse ancestry and my German ancestry, it makes me think about some of the things I've read in the Bible that I also love. I love Jewish culture. I love the Jewish God. And in my opinion, I love his Messiah, Jesus Christ. And thinking about things of mystery, right? Templar Knights hiding gold, or hiding, things across the sea with Viking sailors who all, the craftsmanship of the Vikings is well known.
Yeah.
I mean, and very great. So, it just makes me think what could be out there that has been lost to history. Do you ever think like that? What are history's mysteries to you? Seriously, what are some of history's mysteries that just kind of fascinate you?
I think there's tons of stuff that need to be uncovered, in Russia, Ukraine. I mean, just the fact that, the word Rus, Russia, it is the Finnish word that they use for the Swedes, rutsi, which means they that row. So Rus just means they that row boats, and they're referring to the Vikings. But they were called Varangians.
Varangians, yes, from around 921 or earlier.
Yep. So I think it was Romanus the Third. Romanus.
Because the Vikings, they, in some senses, from what I've heard, some of them intermixed and even had incursions into Russian lands. The
Byzantine Empire had the Varangian Guard, just like when the Roman Empire was around. They had the Germanic, Germanic Praetorian Guard, and they were tough. And there is at the Hagia Sophia, there is old Futark written on the Hagia Sophia. So that's how,
which is in Turkey, modern day Turkey.
Yeah, so that's in Istanbul, which previously was named Constantinople, and before that Byzantium.
Mm-hmm. So along with where we're talking, I want to do this eventually on the channel. I haven't gotten it up. I just read The Eaters of the Dead. It's a book by a Muslim man. I know that I'm obviously a Christian, Norse and German and American, but I think that being able to make peace and also understand other people's culture is very valuable. And Ibn Fadlan was an ambassador of the Caliph of Baghdad, and he went north close to a place of near Russia, near the Rusland, or I don't know what they called it back in 1,000 years ago, but
Kievan Rus. So So it's the word Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, and then Kievan Rus is how they would have.
Yeah. So he was an ambassador sent to this, nation or country or city, but then he and his caravan came upon these Viking, like seamen, right? And like they thought he was a spy, and like they had daggers, and basically weren't going to let him or his other dude out without like explanation. And eventually, the Norse, I think they call it a crone, is like their version of like what you were telling me about like the Oracle of Delphi, but like not necessarily that. Like older Norse women were kind of looked on as like people who would speak to the gods and also decide kind of fates and like what they had happen. Well, one of these women chose this man to go north with the Vikings to fight this other tribe, right? And so it's a very interesting story. Hollywood movie is about it.
The 13th Warrior.
Yeah, the 13th Warrior. And it's based on actual manuscripts, like actual history of what this guy survived. He and 3 other Viking warriors survived. The other men died. And he came back to Baghdad and wrote about it. And like, are there Muslim mints or are there mints of the Persians that you find fascinating or very rare? I actually read about one last night. It's worth like $6 million, 723. What's the name of it? I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a gold mint with Arabic on it.
Okay, so what?
Like around the 723 era, but yeah, it's just like
723 AD.
AD.
Abbasid.
I think that's it. Yeah.
So that would have been the third.
There's like
third
only 12 of
caliphate.
them known in the world or something like that, and they're like each worth like $6 million or something like that too.
I believe the consensus is that there's 4 recognized caliphates. So the first one was the Rashidun after Muhammad's death, and then you have the Umayyad. They're the ones that made it into Spain. Then you have the Abbasid, which lasted about 700 years. And then, it lasted a long time. But then after that, you would probably just say the Ottoman Caliphate, and that's the one that eventually took Constantinople. And
well, what I found was so cool about this Ibn Fadlan, this Muslim man's writing about my ancestors' culture, was like how much he respected them and also befriended them, and then at the same time, they still retain their religious beliefs. Like he retained his Muslim beliefs, and Herger retained his Norse religion, his mythology, and his, you can call it pagan. From my perspective, I do call it pagan, but I was telling you about what I find valuable about my culture is very brave. Like the Viking men and many Northmen in general fought bravely and lived a brave lifestyle.
That was still the golden age of Islam as well. Probably right. I'd say after the Crusades, 12, 13, 1400 is when they started entering, I think, the Dark Age. A lot of people would probably say, you're not supposed to call it Dark Ages, but I think when you prohibit any type of learning, I think Christianity had Dark Ages. We had our Dark Age.
Reformation, prior to the Reformation, in my opinion, the Reformation was a form of enlightenment.
I think
it was getting back to like the actual faith,
The Italian Renaissance of the 1300s. You have certain writers, and then you have the Medici family in Florence that started kind of a modern day banking. And 1300s Italy is where people started collecting again, where people started uncovering Roman coins, stuff like that. And I would say that's when numismatics started.
Cool.
In the 1300s.
I feel like this is a good question that I didn't ask before, that right after what you said. So the Thebes coin that I showed you in there, or like you showed me, obviously, why is that one worth what it's worth? Because it's very rare. Like I saw it's $300 for a shield, a Theban shield coin.
Thebes is up there. So a lot of people, when they hear Thebes, they think of Egypt, because Thebes, ancient Thebes, today where Luxor is, it was one of the capitals of the ancient Egyptians. Memphis was the other, near Cairo now. But Greek Thebes, they were fierce warriors. They eventually defeated the Spartans in a battle. Off the top of my head, I can't think. I think it's a battle of, starts with an L, I think. And it was just a shock, the fact that the Spartans lost. But they had this sacred band. They were just really well. And Thebes is next to the Oracle of Delphi.
And you were telling me about that with Leonidas having to travel so far outside of his country to go to war against
Sparta
not
would have been
not Muslims at the time. The Persians were the ancient Persians were not what we think of as modern Muslims.
No, that would have been the first Persian Empire, the Achaemenid Empire. I think this is
Under Xerxes and Xerxes, and then eventually Darius.
Darius was the father of Xerxes.
Xerxes, and then Alexander the Great, right? He eventually fought Darius.
Cyrus the Great, and then you have Darius the Great, and then eventually Xerxes. And I think a lot of people refer to him as the Great. But the reason why Cyrus and Darius are called the Great is because these Persians allowed the Jewish people that were conquered by the Babylonians and then by the Persians to return, and they paid for the rebuilding of their temple.
The Persians paid for the rebuilding of the Jewish temple.
They will rebuild. They were very open to different gods and goddesses, and that is why, probably through the history of the Bible, why they're called the Great to this day, Cyrus and Darius.
Interesting. And I think it's interesting history when we look at Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, right? I look at them like three brothers with the same dad. Now, I obviously personally believe in Christ as the king. The other two do not, right? But I look at the three religions, major religions, as like, there's like a three-way civil war vying for power amongst the family. It's like when brothers don't get along and don't have peace together. The older brother, the Jews, he thinks he's all that in a bag of chips. And the middle brother's the right one, but nobody wants to listen to the middle brother. And then you got the younger brother who's like, I just hate them both, I want to take her, but whatever. And forgive me if that's whatever. That's crude.
That's Vladimir the Great of Russia.
But, Islam, from my peaceful Muslim brothers, and believe me, there are peaceful Muslim brothers out there. There are some pretty crazy ones, too, when it comes to jihadists. It's like basically like the extreme version of like Nazism, in my opinion, in some senses, with valid emotions to be felt in both, if you actually talk through that on camera, But, like, trying to find a family of unity, right, amongst brothers that see things very differently is hard, and like we need to be able to talk about that in our modern culture for real. Like if we got what's going on, what I thought was super cool about what Casey taught me today just off camera. So I didn't know why Palestine was named Palestine until you told.
After so you have the first Roman-Jewish war that went from 66 to about 70 AD, and then you have the Bar Kokhba revolt during the time of Hadrian,
which is the Jews fighting the Romans, right?
Yep. And that happened between 132 to 135. And then when Hadrian finally conquered or put down the revolt, he renamed it Palestine. And Palestine is the Latin name of Philistines. So he's saying, just like the Philistines once ruled over you, now us Romans rule over you.
Yeah. Very, like, stuff I wouldn't have known if I had not talked with Casey, and like it's intriguing, looking at the Holy Land and trying to understand why all three of these brothers are vying for it, and like what's the actual written like thing, and like trying to figure out how to live in peace together, as brothers. It's very important. We have a lot of Somalians here in our community. I'm loving towards them, and like at the same time, I'm cautious, I'm weary, because we talked and I got your perspective on certain history, like war is eternal and some things just don't stop, and like when things boil up, it's something of what happened in the past. And like what I think is so interesting about the life of Alexander the Great, he conquered basically all of what we're talking about, Judaism, Europe, and into India, and like his thought process on peace and like conquering nations wasn't, okay, now they have to be what I am. It's, I'm going to introduce Hellenism to them. I'm going to introduce Greek culture to them and the gymnasiums and all these other things, but I'm also going to let them keep their religions, keep their beliefs, as long as they're peaceful, because when I come back around, if they're causing revolts, it's war. And he was, in some senses, the king of war, dude.
I would say the Diadochi, which were Alexander's successors, they were more in the process of Hellenizing these peoples. I think Alexander the Great wanted to soak it all in. I think that's why he was not liked among some of his generals, because he just wanted to learn about all these different cultures. I mean, he married Roxana,
Northern
who
Indian
was-
woman.
Yeah,
right?
and then it was Cassander who vied for power and had Roxana and his son Alexander IV put down, killed them, killed his mother Olympias, and then he killed his brother Philip III. So Cassander was and he still was married to his Alexander the Great's sister, Thessaloniki, where we get the town from.
Yeah,
He named a town after her. Just imagine being her and knowing your brother, your father, your father, Philip II had already died.
Grandpa.
But yeah, but your nephew, your mother, not it was a different mother actually. They were half brother sister. But yeah, like Philip and Roxana, Cassander killed all these people, and you got to stay married to them. That would have been tough, like knowing that. But
What you're saying there, it reminds me of the I think it's ideals are peaceful, history is violent quote. You know, like
That's
in American, you know, and just views of history in general, like you want to have these like great ideas and ideals that cultures strive to be. Like in Christianity, it's, you know, sacrifice, it's humility, it's loving your neighbor. Even, whoa, God, like it's amazing. Like this thing called loving your enemy, right? Like that's one of the hardest ones.
Yeah, that's
and it's like that's something that Christ taught. You know what I mean? And it's like ideals are peaceful, but history is violent. And so when that violence does come, and when you're peace in whatever sense, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Christian, or whether you're atheist or agnostic or far crazy left, in my opinion, like LGBTQ+, when your peace is threatened, war is war.
As long as you keep talking, once the talking and the dialogue stops, then usually that, like we said, the struggle, the war, which is the original human state, that's what returns, and then that's where you don't want to be there.
Right. So I've got maybe a few more questions. Like I said, I wanted to keep this to about a half hour, just so that people are curious and like get to see, hey, the mind and the man behind the news.
We'll meet again and
For
stuff
sure.
like that, yeah.
So I've got another one. So do you think that the Knights Templar found and rehid Solomon's gold and treasures? Do you think they actually found something when they were on crusade to Jerusalem, to the Holy Land?
I know they found stuff, and I know Philip IV knows they found, because they really started the first banking system, modern day banking system, where they would give you a stub and then hold on to your treasures, in the sense that the Saracens, Muslims, wouldn't steal it from you, but then they got eventually mad where they would just kill the pilgrims anyway. But in Arabic culture, it wasn't, I don't think they recognized the history at Solomon's Temple. They didn't recognize what was under there. Whereas the Knights Templar realized, oh, we got some treasures here. So I don't think that I totally think they have it, but I think they all went to either Scotland or Portugal after they were disbanded in 1314. Because you have the Knights of I can't remember the name, but it's in Portugal. Knights of Christ.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew it. It started with a C, and I'm like, it's
So along
Knights
with
of
that,
Christ.
I want to buy the Christopher Columbus, like the Spanish Empire commission coin off you today, and I hope some of the people on YouTube and just in general that find this channel definitely pay a visit, so to speak, to Mr. Casey and his case here in Hastings at the antique store. With this and with like the history of Tarshish specifically, I think that it's so fascinating. When I read in the Bible when I was younger that Solomon, right, he would get 2 tons of gold from ships of Tarshish, which is basically like Portugal. It's like a port off of Portugal near Spain. Like, and this is 1000 BC. You know, like we're talking about adventurers from 3,000 years ago. You know what I mean? Like this is like ancient history, dude. And it's like it's fascinating, you know, to think that how could a man get 2,000 tons of gold, and from where? And like, how is gold mined? How is, eventually it turned into something different? Like, I mean, even the gold shields of David. Like, I think about if you could find something like that intact and show it to the world, like, the value would be far more than, wealth or monetary system. It's like, look at history. Look at what was and that has been uncovered,
They just found Philip, I think it was about a decade ago though, they found Philip II's breastplate, and that is pretty cool. It's got golden lions on it, and so that's Alexander the Great's father. But it's, like we were talking about the New World, I think a lot of sailors and captains have known about the New World.
The Americas.
Long before Columbus.
He was saying that, what was it, from Carthage or not Carthage?
Carthage is a city-state of Phoenicia. That's where they get the word Punic, the Punic Wars. And Punic in Latin just means Phoenicia. And that's where they also get, Phoenicia means purple. That's where they get the purple dye from the snail, because only the emperor can wear purple. And Carthage was a city-state for about 700 years before Rome eventually, in the Third Punic War, destroyed it, buried it in salt, so nothing will ever grow. But I think they found a Phoenician rune stone in Brazil. A lot of people though are claiming it to be some sort of fake, but I just think it's fact, because in the Bible they're known as excellent sailors. Right. Solomon uses them for their timber and also for their being excellent sailors. Right,
and like, I mean, if they're getting, specifically it's apes and peacocks are mostly found in India, and like, in my Alexander film, like, talked about how like King Porus had a golden palace with Solomonic columns. He called the Indian king is called, having golden Solomonic columns, basically decorated off of the greatness of who Solomon was. And I mean, if you're building gold columns, man, like that's so much gold, and like, it just,
it doesn't even matter. Even if you hollow them out, it's still heavy.
Yeah. So what I was trying to mention there is like the fact that these great sailors were sailing around the time of Solomon, which is 1000 BC, right? And then they find in 700 BC some sort of Phoenician rune in Brazil. Like, it's not incredible to me to think that actually was possible, that time period. And actually did happen.
I think they found it in 2001 or 1999 maybe. But now, once again, same thing with the Kensington runestone. You have kind of it split. Because I think Olaf, that's the guy that found it in the 1890s. He kind of, so he used his knife and he started digging out the letters, and now when they carbon date it though, it'll go back to when he carved it. Yeah. So it's difficult to see. That's usually, it's like, but you can't have professional archaeologists at every corner of the road in the world. So, but I would have made the same mistake too. I would have started, this is cool, and start
taking out the dirt. I mean, because from what apparently it was under a birch tree, and which
would have been logical. That's what they would have planted. Something.
And to me, like, obviously people know how much I love the Native American history and Native American culture. Like the Dakota, and like the 10 men red with blood that they found. Like the Dakota were a very warlike, united tribe, and it's like even amongst the other native kin, like they kept strict borders. Like nobody got to rule the buffalo beside the Dakota, and like there's even stories of like, pale-skinned, red-bearded people in America, and like, giants, like of like
big time in Peru as well.
Yeah, and like
if you go to China, they found remains of 7-foot-tall people with red beards and red hair, and I think their mummies date back 2,000 years or something.
Yeah, so I mean, here's another thing I like talking, because I was just telling you off camera, like, I like talking about the extraterrestrial, paranormal, giants, and the lure of such things in the Bible and biblical times, and also in modern times. Apparently there was a guy in Cortez's army that, this king of the South American people showed him a thigh bone that was 3 times the size of a normal one. Normal one's usually between your elbow and your middle finger. Seeing one that's 3 times the size. Like, what? And, you know, going back to that, getting to that specifically is like trying to find like physical evidence of such things, of giants, of the Nephilim. Like, what is your thoughts on the American Smithsonian? Do you think that they've hidden some things from the public's eyes, covered things up to try and make things look a certain way?
Yeah.
You know, like from a Darwinian evolutionist theory perspective.
Just look at all the skeletal remains, even in Minnesota, that they found that are gigantic. It's, 8, 9, some 10 feet. And you're like, why did they always take them and then they never display them?
Interesting.
So I think they're just, but in a sense, it's probably going to work against them, because now you're just making people's curiosities rise. When, there was that guy from Indiana that was 8'11", Robert Wadlow. So it's like, it happens. It's just genetics. Sometimes, like Andre the Giant had that gigantism or whatever it's called. But I don't know why they would find the need to hide
Physical
skulls.
evidence,
It's what they would call a genetic mutation, or
and in that book, that Eaters of the Dead, you know, Neanderthal creatures, they actually apparently, from that book, if it's actually historically valid and real, so Neanderthal-like half tribes, like they look human but they're not human. They're full of hair all over beside on their palms, and their skulls are bigger than human skulls. They had a language. Like, these Norse warriors fought them, killed their mother or whatever. And, you know, it's almost like, so when you get two skulls, one that looks like a normal human and one that looks like a Neanderthal, and you're talking about times where half-breed fallen angels had sex with mortal women and produced Goliath, produced the Philistines.
Nephilim.
Exactly. Yeah. When you have that, and then you also have Norse lore, and not just lore, but like history, in my opinion, not just lore or legend, but actual history.
They believed it 100%. Yeah.
And you've got people that are killing your people and eating their dead. Like, think about it. Like, you want that gone. You want to kill that, and you want to fight that. And so these Neanderthal-like, half-breed, demon-like creatures that have hair all over, like a Norse warrior, a Norse quote-unquote god, would want that dead and gone, so that his own people wouldn't be being plagued by them. Yeah. And so it's like, what cultures, because I focus mostly on mine, right? Like Norse, German, Swedish, that kind of thing. If that comes from my own culture, like the stories and sagas of Beowulf, right? Yeah. And like, what did other cultures have to fight and conquer from times immemorial, or not immemorial, without memory, from 4,000 years ago, from 5,000 years ago? What did people actually have to fight to survive in ancient times?
I think they say that the reason why we're so fascinated with gold, first of all, it's from, I believe, an exploded star that made its way to Earth. That's where because gold is not native of Earth. But the reason why we're obsessed with gold,
I don't necessarily agree with that, with that perspective, but this is the first time I've kind of heard that.
Yeah, it usually means that it's a supernova and exploded, and then through asteroid fields. I don't think it's 100% consensus on this, but I sometimes like just bringing it up. But the reason, though, so early humanity getting water was one of your biggest struggles. And when you saw the sun glimmer on water, it meant life. And you knew you would live at least another 3 days. So that's why in our genetics, that's why the color of gold is so fascinating. Like, because generations, things go down, you get these traits that go down and down and down, and that's something that comes back to almost like early humanity. Just that goldish color of the sun shining on water is why it's intrinsically in our minds, and it just means life. And that's why I think even even 2,650 years ago, that's why they made gold the number one type of metal.
And it was once every dollar in our U.S. Treasury was backed by gold at Fort Knox or somewhere else, right?
Yep, that was just
very wise principle if you think about it.
Yeah, it was just a certificate.
My opinion, I think we should make the gold worth more so we can do it today. But
gold is, I think, right around $2,500 an ounce, and silver is $25 an ounce.
Yeah.
So whenever you hear gold and silver, there's a big difference between gold and silver.
For sure. I was thinking maybe it should be more like $10,000 an ounce, and then maybe we could have every dollar backed by the U.S. gold again. But
I heard somewhere in college that they could melt all the world's gold and fill it in 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So that shows you, like, that's not a lot of gold, really. I mean, if you melt it, though, because it is very dense and soft metal. Yep.
So when we're talking about gold, I think this is a good time to finish the video. We've probably gone a little bit over 30 minutes, but you know, this is real American gold. Can you tell me a little bit about this American?
I believe they're called. I know more about the ancient coins, but I still retain some. But I believe it's called an Indian head. But I know I'm not trying to confuse that with the pennies that were Indian heads after the cornet braided cents. But I think this was, they would say, equivalent to like a $5 or a $25. That's what it was.
At the time.
I think so.
At
Yeah,
the time of its mint in
1913.
1913.
So that's, yeah, it shows you how much gold has gone up.
Right. And how much $25 is really worth now.
I want to say it's a $25
good meal in America.
piece.
Chipotle.
Yeah. Because like you'd have your Morgan silver dollars and your Peace silver dollars. So at 1913, they wouldn't have had, because 1904 maybe was the last silver and then they remade them in 1921. And they made the Morgan for a little while, and then they started with the Peace silver dollar, and it just meant to signify the end of World War I. There's peace in the world.
Peace in the world.
Yep. And then the last true silver dollar was 1935. And then, so Eisenhower's aren't considered silver dollars.
I didn't know that. Interesting.
The ones that are minted in San Francisco, I believe, have some silver, but it's. I would always say 1935 was the last Peace silver dollar, but I believe it's called an Indian head.
Yeah.
He started studying so much about ancient coins that he started losing. Because America, you almost have to have a degree just to study numismatics from America.
Wow. Well, hey, sir, it was really nice meeting you. I actually want to give you a free copy of my book here, too, The Story of Blind Beauty on Amazon. I know you gave me some pretty cool gifts, too. I do want to buy the Columbus coin off of you, but giving me the, what was it? I think I have them right here to the left.
Philip II, and then a Byzantine trachea, which is a cup coin. Usually they were made between 1200 and 1400. I think they were made because cupped like this, or so they could stop counterfeiting, or because it's a mixture of silver and copper. It just meant that it's not a pure metal. But
well, yeah, I appreciate friendship, and I honestly, when I first saw your case and then started texting him, like, this is a dude I want to be friends with, and like, yeah, I hope you enjoy the story, and thanks for all the honestly, it's a wealth of knowledge that you possess, and like, it's it's becoming so rare to find people that actually love history for history and like the value of it, and yeah, I just really appreciate your time, and I hope that people online do as well, and just whatever you do, sir, in your future, blessings unto you. And
we'll talk to each other again.
For sure. I'm open to do some more videos.
Yeah, cool.
Any advice? I guess I can end it this way too. So thanks for y'all for watching. Any advice on potentially or guidance as to visiting Norway, Sweden, and Germany? Like any general advice you'd give me regarding that potentially this fall?
Usually coming from a Christian perspective, you'll be a little shocked at the people that don't go to church. I would say the most practicing religion in Sweden is probably Islam.
For real?
Yeah. It will shock you. In Bavaria, Germany, it's a little different because they're a little more traditional.
Right, that's where my family hails from. It sounds like your family hails from
my dad's
Bavaria.
Mies. But if you go to northern Germany, like Berlin, it's almost like the churches are similar to during, like, say, the golden ages of Christianity, well, which would be like, 500 years ago or something like that. It's almost like looked at like a temple for like Apollo or